Hello and welcome to the Guitar Hang Podcast. I'm your host, John Stancorb. Today we're in for a real treat as we dive into the world of a guitar virtuoso whose talent has left an indelible mark in the realm of rock and blues. With a career that spans decades, Johnny A's guitar prowess has earned acclaim worldwide. His electrifying collaborations with Peter Wolf to his tenure with legendary band Yardbirds, Johnny A's mesmerizing guitar work has been at the heart of rock and blues history. In this exclusive interview, we'll uncover Johnny A's remarkable accomplishments, his journey alongside rock legends, and the passion that continues to ignite his musical journey. Please make sure you hit the subscribe button below and ring the bell for notifications. Now, let's hang with Johnny A. First, let me say, anytime I see a video of you in your studio, it's the most tasteful, immaculate, it's beautiful. You have impeccable style.
Too much time on my hands, brother.
It looks great.
Well, what's a studio without a bar? So,
Yeah, you happen to make my wife and my favorite drink, and we've used some of your tips on making old fashions.
Manhattans, you mean?
I mean Manhattan, not old fashioned. Manhattans, not old fashioned.
Yeah. Difference is Manhattan's, a proper Manhattan has rye in it and not bourbon. So it's a little less sweet or less sugar.
Yeah. And going back to that story about Mick Montgomery at the Canal Street Tavern, I had just stopped performing with a Steely Dan tribute, and I wanted to do my own thing. So I put together a trio based on what you had done, and we used to do from your first two albums. I think we probably did at least 12 songs, and it was just
wow.
And we had a regular Thursday night gig downtown Cincinnati at the Havana Martini Bar. But I had told you that I was thinking of working up a arrangement of Walk Away Renee, and you looked at me like, you read my mind, I've already done it.
Yeah, well, I did a solo arrangement of it, yeah.
Yeah, we had worked it up for a trio, but
nice.
I loved your compositional sense, and when you were arranging either a Beatles tune or one of your own tunes, it was just brilliant the way that you like Wichita Lineman.
No, thank you.
Cries Mary, that sort of thing.
Thanks.
Yeah. So I'm very excited to hear about the Jeff Beck project.
Yeah. I was on the fence on whether or not to do that or not. I had been approached, fairly recently after Jeff had passed about doing a tribute band for him, and I kind of really, my knee-jerk reaction was not to do it. I didn't really want to do it. First of all, I don't really think the guy's copyable. And it's I've kind of based my whole career on to trying to have an original voice. So, I was as big of a Jeff Beck fan as I am, and I'm a very big Jeff Beck fan and have been since I bought those Yardbirds albums back in 1965 and 66 when he was in the band and they had their most successful tenure, and had followed him and have seen him, I don't know, over a dozen times. I've had the chance to jam with him. I've had the chance to have my trio support him, and and have been in his orbit, several times, hung out and whatnot. But I just I was never, even growing up in my high school bands, I never really was one to try to copy what other people did. I was surely influenced by him and others, but from my rock sensibility, I would say him more than anybody. But I still never really tried to copy anything. So when I was asked about doing this tribute, and this is, like I said, a while back when he passed, I initially said no. I didn't really want to do that. I wasn't interested in doing a tribute thing, and and then this other booking agent called me again, and he kind of twisted my arm a little bit, and he said, you did 3 years with the Yardbirds, and you did I thought you did a cool job with the Yardbirds, where you paid respect to the guitar players that were in the band, but you were able to maintain your own voice. So he said, I think you can do the same thing with a Jeff Beck thing. And my response to him was, well, I don't want to call it a tribute act, because I don't, people expect a certain thing when you do a tribute act. They expect this note for note interpretation. And, some people even dress up like the acts they're trying to tribute, or put on a show that's, mirrors the legitimate act. And I said, I don't really want to do that. I said, if I can go out and honor Jeff and celebrate his music, and do it kind of in a way that retains my personality, then I said I'd be up for giving it a go, and and I wanted to do a retrospective of his career. I mean, he's had so many albums. I don't know, what, 15 or 16 studio albums, and he's redefined his approach at least 3 or 4 times, from starting with the Yardbirds, then through the Jeff Beck group first ever, and then kind of the Blow by Blow Wired period, and then going into Who Else, and then getting into the house music and Guitar Shop and Emotion and Commotion. So there's just a lot of territory to cover. And it's a lot of heavy lifting. There's a lot of heavy lifting, not just for the guitarist, but for everybody in the band. The drummer needs to be able to interpret, the stuff from the early Jeff Beck group, and then Cozy Powell and Terry Bozzio and Vinnie Colaiuto, and all these people, and the bass players going through, everybody from Clive Chaman to Ron Wood to Pino Palladino to Tal Wicketfeld to whatever. And the same thing with the keyboard player, Nicky Hopkins and Max Middleton and Tony Hymas and Jason Rebello. And there's just a lot of ground for everybody to cover. And and I didn't think it was going to be an easy undertaking. And I didn't really know. I didn't, immediately assume that this was going to be good. A matter of fact, I kind of assumed that there's kind of so much going against it from the start, in regards to having 4 or 5 musicians stylistically being able to pull off 4 or 5 different styles and sounds convincingly, including myself. To just the like I said, the breadth of material, and being able to switch gears from something like Spanish Boots to Behind the Veil, and doing it convincingly while maintaining our own personalities. Because I said to the guys in the band that I've chosen, I said, look, I don't want you to go after this stuff note for note. I want you to capture the spirit of it. Let's try to capture the sounds so that it's recognizable from a sonic imprint to the audience. But I'm not looking for the drummer to do every lick. I'm not looking for me to play every solo note for note. As a matter of fact, I don't. And I said, let's have fun with it, because any other way to me is going to be boring. I've seen some people, first of all, the guy's not copyable. Right. He's not copyable. And the reason he's not copyable is because he never really repeats himself. I mean, like I said, I've seen him countless times, over a dozen times, and I've watched tons of video on him because I'm a big fan. He really never plays the same song the same way twice. He plays his melodies, and he doesn't really even stick to the way he interprets melodies on every performance. I think he's a product of his uh, personality. His and everybody is to an extent. I think every musician, artist is not just guitar players, but anybody is subject to their personalities. But him more so than any other guitar player, I
Yeah.
think, because I think he thrived on pushing himself. Didn't really care about me making mistakes. Would be like a cat that would go on the end of a limb of a tree, and
Right.
how's he going to get back? He always struck me as that, and that's what made him exciting to me. I thought there's a lot of sarcasm and a lot of humor in his playing.
Yeah.
Obviously a lot of aggressiveness, but still a lot of subtlety and tenderness in the way he delivered certain things. Um, and I think that's, as far as how he influenced me, I think that's the way he influenced me the most. It wasn't so much in, I got to get his tone. It wasn't so much as how did he play that lick. I think the fact that the way his personality attacked his instrument gave me a roadmap on what I could do with my own personality.
Yeah.
Yeah, as in relationship to playing my instrument. So that's kind of the way that I'm attacking it, and that's the way I've instructed the band members to attack it. Let's try to have a nice, faithful celebration of the guy's musicality,
Right.
and just approach it with our own thing, and hopefully it sounds and feels good, and people respond to it. Interesting enough, we did our first rehearsal. What's today? Wednesday. We did our first rehearsal Monday,
Yeah.
and we have some shows in April. Those are the first shows, but and I'm not starting regular rehearsals yet. But I had using the rhythm section that I've been using, which is Marty Richards on the drums, who's played with everybody from jazz great Gary Burton to Joe Perry and Jay Giles band. And the bass player who I use in my trio is a guy that I played with off and on for years, but he also played with Susan Tedeschi and plays with John Cafferty and Beaver Brown now. And a singer who I had never met, and I never talked to him on the phone. I was given his information by the agent that's booking uh, this project, and he said, "Well, I said, first of all, I said to the booking agent, I said, this is going to be hard to put together. I said, because I got to find a keyboard player, and I got to find a singer that can cover Rod Stewart, that can cover Bob Tench, and maybe even some of the girls like Imogene Heap and Rosie Bones, and then a keyboard player that can play synth pads and can get those kind of sounds, but can still play Max Middleton type of Fender Rhodes and Nicky Hopkins type of bluesy stuff." So he says it's not an easy task. So he says, "Well, I know a singer." So he gave me the name of this singer. His name is Mike Gill, and he was somewhat from the region where I am, and he was he sings in a Deep Purple Whitesnake cover type of band. And I got some video of him, but one video I got was him sitting in with a band singing "Stay With Me" by the Faces,
Yeah.
Rod Stewart, and he sounded fabulous. And I said, okay, well, if he can sing this, the range is there, he's got a good personality, he looks good. So I called him, and we struck up a conversation. He was familiar with me, and he wanted to do it. And then I had a keyboard player from my area that he does he plays in like this Beatle thing that does the whole breadth of the stuff, all the way through Magical Mystery Tour, Sergeant Pepper, all that stuff. And he also used to play with Ben Orr from the Cars. And I had known Steve. His name is Steve Baker, and I had known Steve, but I had never worked with him. So I called him and I said, "Listen, this is kind of what I want to do." And he was a big Jeff Beck fan, and he's a fan of mine. He was familiar with me, and like I said, so it was Marty Richards, Dean Cassell on bass, Mike Gill on vocals, and Steve Baker on keyboards, and myself. And I didn't want to get into regular rehearsals yet because it's just too far away from the shows, and I didn't want to beat everybody up, and I wanted to keep some kind of freshness to it. But I did want to get a let's get acquainted rehearsal together because I didn't know if this was going to work or not. I didn't know what it was going to sound like, what the chemistry was going to be like, and I felt like if I get together and it's like not happening, I have enough time to cancel these shows, basically. And I mean, they're 4 or 5 months away or whatever they are. So some tickets went on sale, but being that far away, it's not going to cause anybody too much, heartache. So we got together on Monday, and I just gave them 10 songs that was a kind of a smattering of all the stuff, early Jeff Beck group, Rough and Ready Jeff Beck group, and then some stuff from Who Else and Guitar Shop, and I was really pleasantly surprised at how it came together. I mean, I posted a couple videos on my Facebook pages, and like I think the first song we tried was from Rough and Ready called "I've Been Used," which I've always liked that song, and it was the recording and the I put this iPad that I'm talking to you on in the room. Just put it in the room and let the thing roll for the whole session. For the 9 or 10 songs we did, a couple hours, 3 hours, whatever it was. And that version of I've Been Used that's on my Facebook page, that was the first take, the first song, the first rehearsal. And it was like, okay, well, this sounds legitimate, you know.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
So it gave me it inspired me to kind of keep it going. And initially, after I told you my knee-jerk reaction was no, I don't want to do this. And then the agent called and said, "Hey, look, man, you did the Yardbirds thing, and you got great reviews doing the Yardbirds, filling those shoes, and I think you could do the same thing with this." So after I said yes, I put a wish list together of about 30 songs. This is even before I contacted the keyboard player and the singer. And I just started listening to the material, not trying to learn it, just kind of getting familiar with attitude and form, arrangements, so that when I went to learn it, I kind of knew the songs. And then as I'm listening to it, I'm saying like, eh, I'm saying, shit, what did I get myself into? This is like, this is a lot of work, just. And then I just started, then I picked those 10 songs for the rehearsal on Monday. And I just kind of started attacking them. And at first it was like, okay, where do I start? The early stuff, the Jeff Beck group, beck-ola, Truth, that's not that so far out of my comfort range because that's kind of what I grew up with. That's in my DNA, that style of playing. So those songs came, easy. Spanish Boots, Morning Dew, Let Me Love You, Going Down. That stuff came very, very simple to me because you're not even going to learn this stuff. You're going to learn the heads, the licks, and then you're just going to improv. That's what you're going to do. But as the other stuff came into focus, like Behind the Veil, Angel Footsteps, and some of these other songs where you had to not only know the melodies, but apply some of his technique, whether it be the volume swells with the vibrato arm, playing harmonics and with the arm, and melodies with the arm and stuff like that. It just became a little bit more challenging, and it's getting there. It's getting there. I think by the time April rolls around and the gigs, it'll be interesting. And I don't really know what the shelf life of this project will be. I think that just all depends on uh, audience acceptance and ticket sales. I'm not going to, if the ticket sales are flat and all of a sudden there's just not enough money to afford to keep a band like this together, because everybody has to get paid fairly well on this type of a gig. There's a lot of work involved, and there's just a lot of preparation before we even do a gig that people aren't getting paid for. So, I have to make sure that I can pay the guys a good rate on the shows. So, if the gigs are successful and there's more interest at a rate that is affordable, then we'll continue to do it. It's not going to really have anything to do with how good the band sounds, whether or not it continues or not. It's going to have to do with the actual, you know, commerciality, the viability of that. That's what it has to do with. I mean, they're great guys. We had a great chemistry. We had a lot of fun. It was easy, no vibe, no egos, no awkwardness. It was really, really easy. So I was excited about that because it just felt like a good group of guys getting together and playing, and it was easy. Um, but like I said, if the success of it live from a attendance is not there, I probably won't continue the project.
Yeah. Was there a radical, not a radical shift, but in terms of just your choice of picking the right gear for the to capture everything? I know on social media I saw that you got one of the little Fender Tone Master things. I didn't think that that would be something that you would apply to this. It'd be interesting to hear what gear you're thinking about, because Jeff's rig was always a bit Spartan, in terms of it didn't have a lot of crazy effects or things. And
Well, actually, he had a fairly sizable pedal board. The myth is that he didn't use pedals and stuff, but I mean, he had a rotosphere on there. He had a wah-wah pedal. He had a ring modulator on there. He used delay. He used reverb. He had a couple drive pedals. I mean, he had a pedal board. This wasn't a guy that just plugged, a guitar into a Marshall. I mean, so he used the Klon. I think he used another type of distortion. He had a Lexicon delay. He had like I said, a Hughes and Kettner rotosphere. He had a ring modulator. He had, so he had the usual suspects of stuff. It's just that a lot of the myth of Jeff is that he never used pedals and he just plugged straight in and he was able to do all that stuff. And in the past, yeah, maybe when I saw him in 74 or 75 when he was doing the blow by blow stuff, it was like that. But, as he developed and his soundscapes expanded, he used effects just like everybody. And for me, I don't really care what his rig was, as far as the way I approach the gig. I am approaching the gig in my comfortability zone and what I think will allow me to translate the material sonically the best that I can. And as much as I'm a fan of vintage tones and vintage gear and it's cool and all that shit, I'm also a fan of technology. So my solo show, when I go out, I use fractal gear. I just purchased a couple of Marshall Studio JTMs, which are the new 20 watt, low power, 20 watt and 5 watt versions of a JTM 45, which are my favorite amplifiers. But I'm planning on using a modeler and using the power amp and speakers of those, but using the front end of a modeler because I love consistency. I've been using speaker emulation since my days with Peter Wolf in 1992. I mean, every time that you've ever seen me live, whether it was at the Canal Street Tavern or any song that's recorded on any of my albums, they're all direct recordings. There's never been a microphone in front of a speaker in my tone. I started out using the 30th anniversary Marshalls, which had a speaker emulated output in the back. And then later, when I was using different amplifiers, I was using the Mesa Cab clones for speaker emulation with my JTM 45s. And then quad cortexes. I have a Kemper. I have a couple Kempers. I have a quad cortex. I have a couple fractals. And I have this Fender device, the Tone Master Pro. And I don't think there's anything like it, being able to dial up a sound that you like, I think first of all, like whatever the player is, they have to kind of know the sound that they're after. They can't just start twisting knobs and get it. You have to have a sound in here that you can somehow filter out through here and get to here. If you don't have a direction, forget it. You might as well be driving around aimlessly. But if you have a tone in mind and you have gear that's capable of getting it, I don't think there's anything like having something like a model that if you can dial in the tone and then it's consistent from night to night. I love that. I get thrown by tone very easily. If I'm on the stage and it's not happening, uh, I struggle with playing because everything diverts my attention away from playing. And as far as like if you go back and you watch that video from the rehearsal, like I said, which is just an iPad recording of that song I've been used from Rough and Ready. That's the Tone Master Pro going through my little Marshalls. I've got the outputs of the Marshalls without speaker emulation going into the effects returns of the two Marshalls. So you're getting the power amp section of the Marshall and you're getting the sound of the speakers from the Marshall. But it's a Princeton reverb model that you're listening to, so,
Yeah.
Which my favorite Fender amp is a Princeton.
Yeah. And like you say, the consistency on the road, being able from night to night to be able to have the same sonic quality just puts you in the zone. It's less that you have to think about.
Yeah, it's nothing to think about. I mean, I can remember in the old days before I'm talking about like when I used to do gigs in the 70s and I was on tour with Aerosmith and Bob Seger and all these people back then. And you'd spend time at sound or in the club spending time in sound checks and miking the cabinet and then you'd leave sound check and all of a sudden someone would come by and bump the microphone and then it's not the same anymore. So and not to mention going into different rooms with microphones that who knows what condition they're in, or the humidity in the room changing the way the speaker responds in the cabinet. It's just all that stuff comes into play, and I guess I'm a bit anal about stuff. I am kind of like a perfectionist in a way. I've tried to let a lot of that go because it can drive you nuts. But as far as audio and tone, I kind of like to be able to feel confident about the consistency and know that I can deliver what I think is the tone that should be heard to an audience night after night. And if I can deliver that, then if people don't like it, then they don't like it. But if someone doesn't like the sound of the band or the sound of the guitar because of things that are out of my control, that kind of bothers me. If I can control everything down the line except for the volume that the sound man is reproducing the tone at, then great. So I have spent a lot of time uh, kind of honing my speaker emulation and modeling skills, and I do have I have a decent recording studio that's got very good playback speakers, and so I'm able to listen. And I listen to a lot of recordings of other people, and I try to decipher the tone, and I kind of try to sculpt mine in the studio, and then take it out and put it in the real world.
I remember a conversation that we had at that Canal Street after the show, and you were sharing with me that not a lot of people suspect how how big of an influence Prague was for you. The Steve Hackett's, Steve Howe.
Well, not so much Steve Hackett, but Steve Howe, definitely. I have a very wide range of people and musicalities that I listen to, starting with I'm a big fan of the Everly Brothers. I'm a huge fan of Jerry Rafferty. I'm a huge fan of Chris Whitley. And as far as guitar players, the Beatles were a big influence, but I can't necessarily. I think when the Beatles were probably my biggest influence in regards to musicality, composition, arranging, that type of thing. Song form. The Beatles were probably the most influential to me, but guitar wise, and it's right around the same time because the Beatles were 64, and then I got hip to the Yardbirds in 65. So post post Clapton, pre Page, right in the Jeff Beck era, is when I got exposed to the Yardbirds, and Jeff Beck was the guy that I said that's what I want to do. He was the guy that made me go off in that direction as far as a guitarist. Whereas before, when I was influenced by the Beatles, I really wasn't thinking about guitar that way. I was just I was a drummer first. So, when the Beatles came out, I was still a drummer. And then I wanted to play guitar after seeing the Beatles on Ed Sullivan. But then again, when I was playing guitar, learning to play guitar, my focus was not on being it was just the focus was being like a guitar player in the band, like just how, like George Harrison or John Lennon, they were just guitar players in the band. But when I heard the Yardbirds and Beck, it was he was the first guitar hero. I mean, he's really the first guitar hero. I believe even before Clapton, I know that Clapton is iconic, and, he helped shape this, did really start that whole revolution of British blues. But I think that I would have to put Jeff Beck as the first real guitar hero because he was doing things sonically that nobody really was doing in 1965 with the way he was adapting, even back then, kind of microtonal approaches to notes, like you can even hear in something like Over, Under, Sideways, Down, when he plays that lick. And then the second time he plays it, he slightly flats. It's slightly microtonal. And you'd think the first time you'd hear it when it goes in the song that he maybe didn't do the bend all the way. But when you hear it throughout the song, he does it the same way, where the second one, he slightly shifts the pitch. And so he was doing things like that people weren't doing, obviously influenced by Eastern music and sounds. No one was using a fuzz box like that. No one did really feedback like that. And then he started with the wah-wah pedal and all that stuff. But so he was the guy that kind of directed me to, okay, this is the way I want to approach guitar. Not that I want to sound like Jeff Beck, but that's the type of guitar player I want to be. I want to be that guy.
Yeah.
So I think we lost. But you were talking about influences, and then it was everybody. Then it was I started to get into all the British blues guys. Then it was Cream and obviously Jimi Hendrix Experience, who I got to see the original Experience, and then getting into the prog rock. I was a big Yes fan, Gentle Giant, Robert Fripp, King Crimson, a little bit of Family, a little bit of Jethro Tull, early Genesis. I saw those guys live at a college when Peter Gabriel fronted the band. And then I started to get into fusion and was really into Return to Forever with Bill Connors. I was a big fan of Bill Connors. There was something about his rawness to that type of music that I really liked. He was obviously playing jazz-inspired stuff, but it was more rock, as opposed to when Al came in the band, who's a brilliant guitarist. It was different. I thought Bill Connors was more of a street type of player, shoot from the hip type of guy sounded, and I was into people like Moby Grape, big fan of Jerry Miller and Moby Grape and those guys who actually came to sit in with me when I played in Tacoma. And then, when I've heard Intermounting Flame by John McLaughlin, so that was it. It was like, yeah. I don't even know what this guy's doing. I can't even tell what key the guy's playing in. That was then. And then obviously Birds of Fire and, Emeralds, the Visions of the Emerald Beyond. He changed the band then. I never saw the original Mahavishnu Orchestra, but the first time I saw Mahavishnu Orchestra was actually that double bill with Jeff Beck. Jeff Beck and Mahavishnu Orchestra it's the first time I saw Jeff, and it was the first time I saw McLaughlin. Well, actually, it wasn't the first time I saw McLaughlin. I saw McLaughlin play with the Tony Williams Lifetime in 1969. And when it was an organ trio, it was Tony Williams, Larry Young on Hammond, and McLaughlin on guitar, and he was playing a Stratocaster, like a psychedelic painted Stratocaster style guitar. Might not even been a Fender. I don't remember. They were opening up for the Who at this place called the Boston Tea Party in Boston, a club. So so then it influenced by that stuff, and then I started always loved, like, didn't realize it, but I always loved Chet Atkins. Before I realized it was Chet Atkins, because he was playing on all the Everly Brothers sides, and was a big fan of James Burton. Because I used to listen to Ricky Nelson and Elvis and watch Shindig and all those shows. And then later on, I guess, I started to get into jazz, and I'm a big fan of Pat Martino, Kenny Burrell, Johnny Smith, Wes Montgomery, obviously, and those guys. And now it's just exploded. There's just so many fantastic players, in all genres. You can put on Instagram and see all these 60-second guitar stars. They have quite the facility, a lot of these people. But I'm still, probably because of my age and how I was reared, I'm still a fan of melody, and I'm still a fan of phrasing. Velocity and technique and ability impresses me, but not as a steady diet. I can't take a steady diet of it. And all my favorite players, they all had ability. Like Jeff Beck has ability, but he wasn't a guy that just did it all the time. There were flashes of it. There were moments of it that were used for dynamic expression. They were, like maybe, the dessert of the meal. It wasn't the meal.
Yeah.
So that's always been my approach. It's always about the melody first for me, and the song first, and what I do on the guitar was it's always, I guess it's always been for me in service of, and how it works within the framework of everything else.
Right. It was a very fortuitous to have you told a story about your mom taking you to see Hendrix, but to have a supportive parent, and the time that you came up in an area like Boston, to have all those great bands. I mean, every week, every month, there was probably something that you could see or be exposed to. And even on the radio, your choices of what you were likely to hear, there wasn't so much categorization. You might hear a Miles Davis track followed by Earth, Wind and Fire track followed by
Yeah. Well, you're exactly right. I mean, first of all, coming up in Boston, it's a pretty diverse, it's a small town, big city. It's like it's even though it's a city and it's a major city, it still can have a small town vibe to it, and it's a very compressed uh, area where the music stuff was happening. You always had Berkeley College of Music at the time, was called Berkeley School of Music. So there was always a heavy jazz scene. There was always a heavy blues scene. You had people like Caldwell Winfield Blues Band, and it was always a folk scene. You had Bonnie Raitt here. You had James Taylor here. You had Van Morrison here for a while. Uh, and a rock scene, obviously, coming up when I was coming up in the '70s. I first started playing the Boston clubs in probably 74, 75. And it was, my friends that were coming up at the time were uh, Elliot Easton in the Cars, who's still one of my closest friends. I mean, we used to share double bills at the Rathskeller, and Aerosmith was just breaking at the time. I was working at the big music store, and those guys used to come in and Joe Perry. I mean, they had no money. I used to give Joe Perry strings across the counter for free because those guys couldn't afford to buy it. Matter of fact, the first album was recorded across the street from the music store that on Newbury Street that I worked at, and me and one of the other guys in the store carried the gong over to the studio for the end of Dream On. So I go back with all those guys. I mean, Jay Giles was already kind of happening at the time, and I didn't meet Peter till much later uh, in the 80s. But, you had a lot of great local bands like, the Stompers and the Nervous Eaters and, Till Tuesday was coming up. And so it was a very diverse musical scene, and it was very healthy. You had new wave stuff, you had rock bands, you had blues bands, you had jazz acts, you had punk bands, you had, everything. And we were fortunate. When I say we, I mean all of us struggling musicians trying to get a break. We were fortunate that we had a radio station in town called WBCN, which was one of the first FM stations in the country. And I think it came on the air in maybe 68 or something like that. And you're right. You would listen to that station and you could hear Miles Davis, the Monkees, the Mamas and the Papas, the Beatles, Frank Zappa and the Mothers of Invention. You could hear all that stuff in an hour, plus the Everly Brothers. And, we had a big black community. So we had a station in town called WILD, which played all the Motown stuff. And you would hear Little Willie John, and you would hear Otis, and you'd hear the Supremes, and you'd hear, all that stuff. So, uh, and going back to, I had a supportive mother. She never said, well, music is good for a sideline, but you got to go to college and you got to, take over the family business. And it was never like that. I mean, I saw the Beatles in 66. I saw Hendrix in 68. I saw Moby Grape on their first tour. Like I said, I saw all these bands in the clubs in 69 and 70 when I was just, I was probably 16 years old back then. So I was really lucky. I had always had great gear. We were lucky that I was lucky that my mom not only was supportive, but I would consider ourselves, I guess, middle class. We weren't rich, but so I had a Marshall stack. I had a wah wah pedal in '67. I had all that stuff back then in high school, and so it was pretty cool. And one of the earliest memories I had, I was just thinking about this the other day because I put a song in my solo show, Morning Dew. That the first version I ever heard by that was by the Grateful Dead on that first album that they had out, which I have. But there was a guy that my parents were friendly with around town. He was in a band in Boston at the time called the Improper Bostonians. And they were kind of a big local thing in the 1967, 66, or whenever that was. And this guy's name was Dick Jeffries. And he was a really nice guy. And it was almost like a mentor in a way, not full time, but he was very inspirational to me to kind of continue and trying to do what I do. As a matter of fact, the very first thing I ever recorded with two songs was Morning Dew, Grateful Dead version, and Get Out of My Life Woman by Butterfield Blues Band. And Dick Jeffries, I remember he came down and the band was set up in the cellar. We mic'd everything, and he had his little 2-track tape recorder in a closet with headphones, and he recorded us and all that other stuff. So, I was very fortunate at a time to not only have a supportive mom who had the resources to be able to, buy me that Paisley Telecaster in 1968, afford to give me a couple $1,000 to go in the studio and record that 4-song demo. Um, but was in a great music community that had a great supportive radio station that would play local bands on the radio, get you exposure, a vibrant club scene, and a varied musical, uh, you know, palette. It was great. I was lucky.
Yeah, that's that's a wonderful thing to have a parent that is sees the value of, you know, investing in your future. I mean, she didn't have any idea of exactly how far you would take it, but it's a beautiful thing of how far you have taken it.
Yeah,
I'm interested in, I never got to see one of your solo shows, but having seen your trio several times, I was kind of curious what the, can you describe a little bit about your solo shows? And I'm assuming that there was some looping going on.
there's a lot of looping going on. Um, the show consists of I kind of branded it just me and my guitars, and it's really a celebration of my musical influences. So I don't do any of my original music in this, um, and I've always been a proponent of just playing good songs. I don't care who writes them. I don't care if I write them. I don't care if someone else writes them. I just want to play good songs and good melodies. But this project originally, I guess I've been doing it now for, I'm trying to think of how many years I've been doing it. At least 5 or 6 years now. And part of it grew out of my frustration with the band because I wasn't happy with, um at the time, I felt the band was stale. I didn't feel the band had their heart and soul in what was going on the stage, and I almost felt like it was, mailing it in, and that kind of frustrated me. I mean, and I get how sidemen can feel like that because it's not really their thing, and they don't get all the spoils if something happens. So I guess it's hard for them to be excited in something unless it's their own. I guess I get that, but it just got to a point where it just felt too mailed in for me, and I had been wanting to do a solo thing for years and years and years. My growing up, my mom owned a bunch of lounges and restaurant lounges, and she always had a piano bar. And there was a guy that would play piano in the background, and I always was enamored with the fact that someone could just sit there by themselves and entertain and just be background music or foreground music or whatever, but deliver the whole song. Um, and I was never really that type of a guitarist, and because I was always the guy that played behind the singer and then would step out and do my 30-second solo and then play behind the singer. And it wasn't until I started the trio and the solo show, not the solo thing, but the trio, the first record I made in 1999 or whatever, sometime Tuesday morning, that I decided that I'm going to use my instrument as my voice because I had gotten a bad case of laryngitis when I was working with Peter Wolf, and my voice never came back completely. So I couldn't really be a lead singer anymore. So I tried to develop my guitar skills and more and more and more into chord melody stuff. And then you flash forward 10 years or how many, 15 years or 20 years, whatever it was, when the band was starting to feel stale to me. And I had been wanting to do a solo thing for years, but couldn't figure out how to do it. I wasn't really adept enough to be like a Joe Pass or a Tommy Emmanuel or someone like that at the time. So I just started messing about with looper pedals, and I finally figured out, oh, okay. And I didn't want it to be a looper thing where I just jam on one chord. So many guys do that. I wanted to still be able to do song arrangements. So I kind of figured out the Rubik's Cube there, and I started doing it. And it really, it was serendipitous in the fact that I was kind of burnt out on the band thing, and the solo thing came along because the business started to shift, and it started to almost be impossible to tour with a band, at least at my level, because it's not like I make huge money when I go out there. So it would be hard to keep. I couldn't do it now. I couldn't put a band on, even a trio on the road. It's just too expensive. Yeah. So it just came out at a good time, and the Lupa show, it got great reaction. I'm able to go around the country and wherever and make a living doing it. Um, it's expanded now. I have added some vocals to it, and I just kind of new looper thing that allows me to actually put a rhythm track, a pseudo percussion track behind it. So the show consists of some songs that are just solo guitar, no looping. Some songs have solo guitar and then maybe a section that has looping, like at the end of Strawberry Fields Forever or something. And then some songs have some percussion in it. And then now some songs have some vocals in it. So it's a pretty dynamically shifting solo show, I think. It's
Yeah.
pretty good.
Yeah, I'm curious, like if you were to play something like Strawberry Fields, does the tune start out where you're playing kind of a chord melody thing, and then you're another section you would loop that to allow you to extrapolate on the melody with single lines?
Well, with Strawberry Fields Forever, the way that's arranged is the whole song is solo guitar until it comes to the end of the song when you start to get all that backward masking and stuff. And that's where I bring in the looper, and that's where I start to quote other songs within Strawberry Fields, like Within You and Without You, and Tomorrow Never Knows, and Are You Experienced, and things like that. And that's where I bring other stuff in. Same thing, like I do a version of Time After Time by Cyndi Lauper, and most of that song is solo guitar until the end, where I build it up and add parts. But then there's other songs like Can't Find My Way Home by Blind Faith, which the whole song has got looping and layers and stuff like that. So it just depends on the song and how I'm feeling I want it to build. And I'm cognizant of the fact that I can't use looping in every song because it's just going to get boring for an audience. So I try, like I said, I try to change the dynamic texture of the show. Some songs have no looping, some songs have looping, some songs have looping with the rhythm percussion behind it. Some songs have vocals. So it shifts a lot.
If you were to have something that's a percussive track in the background, um, are you creating that track, the percussion, or is it something that's a pre-programmed loop, like that's stored in a bank?
No, I'm not creating it. There's a the looper pedal that I'm using now. I just started to use this Boss RC600, and it's got about 30, 40 drum kits in there, and each one of them has 6 or 8 different variations, and then there's just some percussion tracks, and so it's just something like that. And I don't use it prominently. I just use it to kind of a little movement. There's a little air in the background that it's not up as loud as a drum kit or anything like that. I don't try to pretend that I'm up there playing in a band. I just try to use it as some kind of texture.
Yeah. Um, Moving from your custom Gibson guitar back to Strats for this project, and I guess going back to Strats predates the Jeff Beck thing a little bit, but just kind of interested in what was the impetus to go back and favor the Strat?
Well, first of all, I know I'm primarily known as a Gibson artist because my professional career, meaning my own solo career, uh, I used Gibsons. And the reason I used Gibsons, most of my career, I mean, I've been playing since I was 11. I'm 71. I'll be 71 this month. So I've been playing for 60 years. The bulk of my playing has been on Fender guitars throughout my life. I got my first Fender guitar in 1968. It was a brand new Paisley Telecaster. 1971, I bought a Strat from Jay Giles. When I played, I also had a 1970 Les Paul that I bought new. But I played Fenders a lot. When I was coming up, I had a band called The Streets. I used to use my 1965 and 64 Strats in that band. After that, I was in a band. I had a band called Hidden Secret. I used my Stratocasters. Then I had a band in the 80s called Hearts on Fire that was kind of a rootsy, kind of predated Lone Justice, but it was that type of a band where it was Everly Brothers harmonies and kind of a rootsy rock band. And I had a 1952 Telly that I used in that. And then when I played with Peter Wolf or Bobby Whitlock, I used my Strat and my Telly with Bobby Whitlock. When I played with Peter Wolf, I was using both Les Paul, Telly, and Stratocasters. And when I left Peter Wolf, which was 98-ish, and I was starting to put this instrumental trio thing together, I felt I couldn't use a Fender anymore because Stevie Ray Vaughan was so popular then. And, there's quintessential tones that you get on a Fender Stratocaster or you get on a Telecaster or something like that. And at the time when I was playing, it's somewhat of a approach of like a Hendrixy tone, let's say. And it was okay to use it until Stevie Ray Vaughan came along, and then he was such a blistering and great player, fabulous player. But I used to go out, people used to say, "Oh man, you must be really influenced by Stevie Ray Vaughan," and that's a great compliment. But I wasn't. I mean, we're about the same age, and I'm sure his influences and my influences are paralleled. So I immediately said, "Well, I can't." I'm making a new record. I can't use a Stratocaster anymore. I got to find something else. And initially, I was going to use I have an old '67 Gretsch Viking, and I was going to use that. And I started playing this stuff, and I said, I'm going to get the Brian Setzer thing because of the Gretsch. He's such a Gretsch guy, and Gretsch is such a distinctive tone. So I just started searching around, and I happened to walk into a music store in Boston, and I saw that ES-295 that's on the cover of my first album. And I picked it up and I started playing in the music store some of the stuff that I had been working on. And I said, I think this could work. So I bought that guitar and I strung it with flat wound strings. And pretty much 70% of the record is that album. And I used the 335 and some Les Pauls, my Firebird 7 and L5. I used a bunch of different things. And that continued on through pretty much my whole recorded career, the Gibsons. In 2003, they approached me about doing a signature model. It was a year in development and came out in 2004, was in the line for 18 years. Very successful guitar. And then in 2020 or so, or maybe 2018, Gibson changed ownership and someone else bought the company. And I had a meeting with them at an AM show, and they were supposedly behind me in regards to, at the time I was playing with the Yardbirds, and I was using Les Paul Juniors. And before this new regime bought Gibson, I had been working with Gibson on a modified Les Paul Junior that I actually have 4 prototypes of that was built by one guy, Matthew Klein. And we were going to release that model as another signature model and a Yardbirds inspired guitar. Company gets sold. I have a meeting with the new head of the company at NAMM and tell him about the guitar, and they're interested in putting it out, but he says, first we want to relaunch your Johnny A signature model. The plan was to relaunch my guitar that had been successful for 18 years, and then, consider putting out the Junior. Well, 2 years went on, nothing happened with them. And then the next thing I know, they dropped me from the roster. that is coinciding with the pandemic. So I'm at home now. I'm not signed to Gibson. I had run into Chris Fleming, who was the head of the custom shop at Fender, and he said, "Hey, Johnny, how you doing?" I said, uh, and this was at another NAMM show. I said, "I'm doing okay. How you doing?" "Oh, great." He goes, "Hey, I got one of your Epiphone Johnny A's. I love the guitar." And I said, "Oh, that's funny." I said, "I've been jonesing for a Stratocaster. I don't have a good Stratocaster anymore." I said, "I have a Clapton Strat, but it doesn't feel like a vintagey Strat." He goes, "Well, let me make one for you." So he says, "Call me when you get back to Boston." So I call him up and we talk about the specs and what I wanted. And he sent it to me, and then he built me another one. And at the time, there's no Gibson deal. I don't have a deal with anybody, but I'm playing the Fenders every day, and I got myself reacquainted with why I loved a Fender Stratocaster. So one thing turns into another, and I get a call from Fender, and they said, they realized I wasn't with Gibson anymore, and they gave me the opportunity to do something with them. So I signed with Fender 3 years ago, and we started talking about the Johnny A Signature Strat, which is out now. It's been out for a year, and it was 2 years coming out, and mostly because the pandemic shut everything down in materials and workers, and it might have been out a year earlier, but it's out now. It does well, and I'm really excited. And they're in the process. I'm having a kind of a hot rodded or resto mod version of a Stratocaster being built for this Jeff Beck project, beck-ola. That's what we're calling it, and it's got a prototype Wilkinson. Trev Wilkinson was kind enough to send me out a prototype of one of their new bridges. It's a VS 1300 bridge that's on there, and I was able through Fender to get one of the original Wilkinson nuts that Jeff preferred on his guitars. So it doesn't have the LSR roller, and it doesn't have the second version of the Wilkinson. It's got the original Wilkinson nut on it, and Ron Spurzel put together a special set of trim locking tuners, and we came up with a special color for it and some special appointments on the guitar and a little bit different wiring harness and a custom design set of pickups for it. I don't have the guitar yet. It's in kind of as we speak. It's in process.
Yeah, anybody that's familiar with your career will know that whatever it turns out to be, it will be impeccable because your aesthetic.
Because I'm a nut.
Your aesthetic for your signature Gibson guitars was amazing, and I've seen some photos of some of the Strats, but I just know it's going to be amazing because you really do have a great taste in things, a panache, if you will.
Well, thank you. Appreciate that. I struggle with it. I look at a lot of things that I don't like about a lot of things, and then when I put together my stuff, it's like, okay, well, trim the fat here, and don't really need this. I do like things that are kind of like dual personality. Let's say
Yeah.
they harken back to the vintage, but they're also modern simultaneously. So I do like modern features, but I do like vintage feel. And the Gibson was a lot like that. It was very symmetrical, that guitar. I mean, it's very, very minute details that I'm sure go over a lot of people's heads on that. Like just the way that the pickguard comes down. If you watch how the pickguard comes down on that guitar, and it just blends and goes right into the F-hole style. It just scoops its way right in, and the guitar is totally symmetrical. It has a beveled peg head. Like if you look at the peg head, it narrows down towards the edge of the peg head, like a lot of 30s and 40s and 50s Gibsons did do. So there's a lot of things that tip its hat to the original golden years of Gibson, but there's a lot of updated things in design element and playability. And with the Fender, I just tried to make the best L series Stratocaster I could make. And that's what those guitars are. It has my own neck profile and pickup complement, but as far as body sculpting, appointments, treatment like that, it's basically a great 63 to 65 Stratocaster. The colors, those are one-off colors. Fender never did those colors before. The sunset glow, the red color was, I was able to get the GM paint code from my dad's 1959 Pontiac Bonneville, and I sent that to Fender, and they were able to get the paint. And so the color of that guitar is the color of my dad's old 1959 Pontiac when I was a kid. And the gold is a color called Lydian gold, and I told them I wanted a greenish gold, and we came up with that formula, and that's it.
That exactly speaks to the level of detail that you go, and the end result speaks for itself. But to go to that length to get the right paint from that car to have it, that's fantastic. The end, like I said, it's when you see something like that, you kind of marvel at how beautiful it is. But there's a lot of it's all in the details.
Devil's in the details. It's usually not really one thing that makes something great. It's always a bunch of little things put together in the right order and in the right amounts that I think make something special.
Will the Wilkinson Bridge have the ability to pull up like a minor third or something for some of those that wish you were here?
Yeah, I mean, I have all my bridges floating, even on my stock Strats. The problem with a stock Strat, I've broken plenty of arms inside the blocks because they just don't necessarily. I mean, for my solo shows and my trio, it's fine. I love the regular vintage style Fender thing. It works fine because I'm not really that aggressive with in my own band. I kind of treat it as a vocalist, not unlike how I treated my Bigsby on my Gibsons. But for a Jeff Beck thing, or it requires more of an aggressive approach, and you can't really have any slop in the arm. The thing about the Fender, no matter how you put it in, you can always feel the arm inside the shaft wiggling a little bit. And when you're trying to play melodies
Yeah.
on the arm, it's got to have a constant contact, and it can't be any slop. So, but he did modify the arm for me, the bridge for me. Like I said, it was a prototype bridge, and I asked for because a lot of those Wilkinson bridges have that thicker arm. The girth of the arm is a little bigger, and it doesn't. I wanted something that was vintagey, so I asked Trev if he could manufacture a vintage style arm with a vintage style Fender tip on it, so it looked like a vintage tremolo arm. And he had him manufacture a different collar size for the bridge for the arm to fit in, and he also had to manufacture a different screw and drill a different metric size hole in the arm, so when it was just a whole different thing. And I asked for the metal on this guitar is the treatment of the hardware is two-tone. It's satin gold and satin chrome, so it's gold and silver together, but dull. So they didn't do a satin gold bridge. So the bridge is satin gold and stainless steel saddles, and so it's a combination of like that. But to answer your question, yes, the bridge will float, just like all my bridges do, and allow me to come up a major third. But I'm not doing. It's hard to do the whole catalog. I mean, there's just too many songs. So I'm trying to do material from every album, and I think we are. I think I picked songs from every album in every era. Some songs I've stayed away from because they've been too regurgitated by people. But some songs you have to do because people are going to expect it.
Yeah. Curious what you might be doing off of Emotion and Commotion.
I don't know. I'd have to look at the album cover. What's on it?
Opens with Hammerhead, um, Nestadora.
No, I'm not. I'm trying to think if I'm for the modern stuff. Right now, I'm doing Behind the Veil.
Yeah.
I'm doing Angel Footsteps. I'm doing uh, Behind the Veil, Angel Footsteps, and let me look at my phone. Hold on. Two Rivers.
Oh, beautiful. That's a great one. That's lovely.
So I'm not doing Where Were You um, yet. I don't know if I will. I'm not sure. I don't know. I mean, it's just. I mean, here's the kind of hit list of stuff. So to get an idea of, let me see if I can find the complete list here. I've decided not to do any Yardbird songs for a couple reasons. One was I didn't want the band to think I was uh, using my time with them as a stepping stone to this thing. A and B, I don't really think that the Yardbirds music, when you hear it with the Jeff Beck group stuff, it doesn't really even work. Even when I heard him at the Hollywood Bowl doing a couple of the Yardbird songs and then his material, it it didn't. I don't know. It just seemed like it was
Yeah.
too much of a shift. But I mean, right now on the hit list, Shapes of Things, Jeff Beck Group, Let Me Love You, Morning Dew, Bolero, Ain't Superstitious, All Shook Up, Spanish Boots, Situation, I've Been Used, Going Down, Superstition, Because We've Ended as Lovers, Air Blower, Three-Way Jam, Lead Boots, Blue Wind, The Pump, People Get Ready, Two Rivers, Behind the Veil, Angel Footsteps, Brush with the Blues, Rolling and Tumbling, I Put a Spell on You, Live in the Dark.
Yeah, that's going to be excellent. I think you're going to be making a lot of folks happy. That's fantastic. That's
Well, I don't know, first of all, if all those songs I mean, I put together a list that was that big because I don't know if they're all going to sound good or if they're all going to work. Some might work, some might not work. And then those songs you couldn't do them all because there's just too many songs to play. That's about 2 hours right there, and we won't do a 2 hour show. We'll do like for a headlining show, we'll do like a 75, 90 or something like that.
yeah,
But I thought that was a good smattering of all the eras.
yeah,
I do have a singer, so I couldn't, it's probably going to be the ratio will probably be 60-40 instrumental to vocal, but I couldn't just have a guy up there to sing 3 songs the whole night. And then, the rest of the night he's backstage, eating hamburgers or something. I don't know.
yeah. It sounds fantastic. Well, we're going to be very excited to see what comes next for you. This is really exciting.
Well, I kind of hope it's, now that we did a rehearsal and it was fun, it gave me some energy to the project and made me see that, okay, this could be cool.
Yeah,
This could be cool, and it doesn't sound like it's a rip. It's not like I'm going to go out there and wear, slave armbands and I don't want to do that. I want to, once I came to grips with doing it and feeling like, okay, if I can approach this like I approached the Yardbirds,
right.
which was I never played the shit note for note. I played it different every night. I honored them by playing the licks that needed to be there, the heads of the songs and the melodies, but the solos were always different. And just try to capture the spirit of, Clapton when I was playing Ain't Got You, Beck when I was doing the Beck stuff, or happenings 10 years time ago. And, I think that's the only song that, well, we did I'm Confused too, which was basically Dazed and Confused. So, trying to capture the spirit of those guys without, being a copycat.
Yeah,
I want to try to maintain my own originality. I spent my whole life trying to have my own voice. Whether I have it or not, who knows? But I mean, that's what I've spent my whole life trying to do.
Absolutely. Well, you definitely have your own voice. This is and it would be a way that I'm sure Jeff would be very proud of, the fact that it's you.
He'd probably laugh at it if I.
You never know. The fact that it's keeping the music alive, and it's a great way to honor him by doing it your own way. You know.
Well, I never would have done it while he was alive.
Oh,
I definitely never would have done it while he was alive. So I think you're right. I think if the band can deliver and celebrate the music in a way that captures the spirit, captures a good energy, and echoes the vibe of it, I think that's a great way to approach something like that. And that's how what I've kind of instructed and told the guys that this is the roadmap. I mean, yeah, okay, when you're doing the early Jeff Beck group stuff, beck-ola, you kind of have to approach it like Ron would, but I'm not telling you to don't play every note because I'm sure he didn't play it right twice, the same way twice. And same way with me or the keyboard player. Try to get the sound so that when you're playing Behind the Veil or you're playing, Angel Footsteps, that the sonic integrity is there, but you don't have to play the shit note for note.
well,
Same with me.
you've been incredibly generous with your time, Johnny. Thank you so much. You're
Thanks for having me.
a hero of mine, so I
No, thank you.
appreciate it, and look forward to catching one of the shows soon.
Yeah, I don't know about traveling with it. To be honest with you, I mean, it's right now it's just in my region. I think we've got some offers maybe in Philadelphia and New York, but right now there's a there's a Boston area show. There's a couple shows in New Hampshire. There's a show in Rhode Island, but it might be a New York show coming up. But right now it's we're just going to see what happens in these first handful of shows, and then if there's, like I said, if there's a desire for it or if there's a market for it and people are willing to have us go to Florida or have us go to LA or have us go to Cleveland or something like that, and we can afford to do it, then we'll do it.
Awesome. Well, it's gonna be very cool. Thank you
All
so
right,
much
man.
for today, man. It was just a real treat. Is that
Okay.
a bust of John Lennon behind you?
Yeah, it was actually a whiskey bottle.
Okay, I was like, it just dawned on me what that was. So,
Yeah, it's a whiskey bottle with John Lennon's sculpture of John Lennon's head.
well, I hope you have a great week, man. Thanks so much
All
for
right, man.
time and great conversation.
All right. Take care of yourself.
See you, man. Bye.
Thank you for tuning in to the Guitar Hang Podcast, interviews with noteworthy guitar players from around the world. Go ahead and hit the subscribe button and ring the bell for notifications to stay updated on our latest episodes.